Discussive learning should be a panacea, and there's no shame unless in Ben Sara. We're in the middle of Samach Dalet Amid Aleph. It's a little over halfway down. Let's see, it's about 7 lines up from the wide line. That's for Rav. That's where we're up to. Samach Dalet 64a. Okay. At Machlekes, Rav and Rabbi Yochanan regarding Bali Chayim Nidachim. If an animal becomes ineligible and then it becomes back eligible, is it then acceptable? If it's rejected. So the example was, we have the 2 goats. The lottery was performed. One of the goats dies. So temporarily, the other goat is rejected until it gets a pair, until it gets its. It gets a pair. So we get a pair, but we instead of getting just one, we get 2. And now the question is, which one? I know I have a new one that I'm sacrificing, but what about the other one? Or let's say it's we replace the Sarah Mishtaleah. Now, which of the other goats? I have a new one and I have an old one that could be brought as a korban. So Rav said, "Oh, bring the first one, the old one." Why? It was rejected from him. Well, Rav holds Bali Chayim Einim Nidachim. It's not considered rejected. That was the original one. You used it. Rabbi Yochanan said, "No, it was rejected. We used the 2 new ones. Right? One of them died. It would now be the Asasa. And then I have a new one that would be brought as a sacrifice. Why not the old one, the first one? Poor thing." It says, no, it was rejected. It can't be brought as a sacrifice anymore. So where did we know this from? Rav said he learns it from a mum oiver. It's a temporary blemish. If a korban had a temporary blemish, he can't bring it. But when the blemish goes away, it becomes acceptable. So you see, we don't say Bali Chayim Nidachim. It was temporarily rejected, and now it's acceptable. Rabbi Yochanan said that if you look at that pasuk, it says Mashchosam Bahem Mumbam, and he wanted to learn from that Bahem, that exception that an animal doesn't get rejected, that's only by a temporary blemish. But in all other areas, something that's temporary, that's rejected, doesn't come back. But Rav, this is what we're holding. Haru Bahem, that should be like in quotations. That word Bahem. That word in them, which it has a corruption in them, it has a blemish. That's only if it's not in a mixture that we have this problem. It's coming to teach me halacha that a blemish is only a problem if it wasn't mixed with other animals that were not blemish. We're talking about animals, we're really talking about the limbs. As we'll see in a moment. Kidetanan, as we'll start in the Mishnah. Ivarim tmimim be'ivarim balimumim. There's limbs of an animal that did not have a blemish, perfect animal, mixed with limbs of an animal that is blemished. So Rabbi Eliezer Merim Karav Areish Shalachim Yikrivu Kol Russian Kulan. This sounds like smicha. I love this. If one of the heads of these animals was already offered on the altar. So I have a question now. What about really there's a problem here. Some of these animals had a blemish. They should not be put on the altar. Yeah, they're already all shechted. And now they're a bunch of limbs. One of them had a blemish. So once I offered up on the altar one of the heads, then I can assume like this. I can say that which head was put on the altar. Probably the one that shouldn't have been. And therefore I can put all the rest on. Whatever could have gone wrong already went wrong. Now the rest are good. That's Rabbi Eliezer's view. Kurav shalachan miyam, if I offered up one of the, right? Right. So you want to say the other way. this is a principle of Toilen Hakilkul B'Makulkul, or Toilen Makula. Your assumption is that the one that was offered was the one that wasn't supposed to be, and then the rest are. We had, and neither we had this also. There's 3 women that were in a bed. They found blood. Which one was it from? We assume that it's from the one that was tamei already, not the one that. Yeah. So let's say one of the legs was offered. Then you offer up all the other legs because the one that wasn't supposed to be offered was already offered. The Chachamim say exactly the opposite. Even if all of them were offered except for one, then Yasala basis Shefa, that one is taken out to be burnt because that's probably the one that wasn't supposed to be. Exactly the opposite approach. Right? So the one that's left is the one that was no good. That's the Chachamim view. What are we saying here?
There's no way of telling
No, they didn't have trackers back then. So, yeah, I heard in a Shlachta they said they had a shaila and something got mixed up. So they asked the Rav, they said, okay, it's bottle, and take one of them and throw it out. Then they were able to track it. They figured out a way how to track which one it was. It turned out that the one that they threw out was exactly the one that was. Yeah. Anyway, so that's how it works. What we're saying here is very interesting. Rav is going to follow the view of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says that once it's mixed up, then it would be acceptable. Once it's mixed up, and one of them was, when am I not allowed to offer up an animal that has a mum? That's only if there was no confusion, if it was just on its own. But once it's in a mixture, and with another detail, and one of them was offered, then the rest of them you can offer. And I see that's from this pasuk of Bahem. So Rabbi Yochanan used the word Bahem to teach me that Balei Chaim nidachem, and it's only by a mum oiver that it's acceptable. Rav says Bahem tells me that it's only be'en when it's alone, not when it's in a taruvas.
But it's not alone. It's not like the Bashisha.
Right. It's not about the Bashisha.
When you had individual things, you could have applied a majority.
Yeah, we're not using a majority either. This is a unique halacha where it's not a majority. It's taking one of the. It's like taking one of them and throwing it out and saying, okay, the rest are fine. A random one. Throwing out a random one and the rest are fine, yeah. Yeah, so this is a new one. This is
sandwiches, and then you eat one.
The other one's probably kosher.
And then someone comes and says, by the way, one was, a great sandwich. Yeah. Exactly. They do provide some jobs, right?
Yeah. Why? Oh, I see what you're saying. So, who came up with this is the pasuk. According to Rav, the pasuk tells me that the isser is only when it's banned, but if it's mixed up, then you have this leniency. V'idach, where does Rabbi Yochanan know it? He used the pasuk of Behem to teach me Balei Chaim nidachim. And that's a special thing by a Mamayver. So nafkale mi bam bahem. Is that the same word? Bam in them and bahem in them. Basically the same. That extra hey it doesn't really add anything. So Rabbi Yochanan says that that's an extra lima. The idach. What does Rav do? He has 2 limudim there, bam and bahem. Bam bahem leidarish. He doesn't learn from bam or bahem. That's not enough of it significant. Basically, the Gemara does this. It minimizes the extra word to the point where we say that it's negligible, and then they argue about if it's negligible or not. Okay. Ularav, nihinami the Balei Chaim and nidachim. I understand that according to Rav, I can use the first animal that its mate died. Why can I use it? It was rejected in the interim when the mate died. So I can use it because because while it was alive, it doesn't get rejected. But why do I have to use it? Nihinami, right? Although the Balichaim Nidachim, however, but I should still have a choice. Why can't I use the second one also? There should be no problem with the second one. There's a shaila on the first one. Rav says it's acceptable, but I have to use it. Rav Savalak Rab Yesi, we had this Gemara just a few days ago. Rav learns like Rab Yesi that you should use the first one. And that came first. Which Rab Yesi? Hey Rab Yesi. The question isn't which Rab Yesi is this. The question is which statement of Rab Yesi you see that Rab Yesi holds this, that you use the first one. Rab Yesi is Rab Yesi ben Chalaka. So this is Rava explaining Rav that he holds like Rab Yesi, he's following the opinion of Rab Yesi ben Chalaka. Rava must be like a third, fourth generation. Rav is a first generation, and Rab Yesi is towards the end of the Tanakh. Hi Rab Yesi, which Rab Yesi? Name Rab Yesi the Kupes. Maybe you say it's Rab Yesi from Masechta Shkalim. We had these different boxes, baskets that were filled with coins, and they would fill up 1, 2, and 3. So the Tanakh was taught in the Mishnah. Shalish Kupes, Shalish Sayin, Shalish Sayin. There's 3 baskets. Each one has 3 saw of coins in it. So it's a measurement, the size of 144 eggs. Shebehem Terminus Alishka. That from them they would do truma, they would take the coins out of the chamber, because of Aleim Aleph Beis Gimel. And on those baskets it said Aleph Beis Gimel. That means it was the first, the second, and the third. Vitanyan, it was taught in the Braisam, Rab Yesi, Lama Kasav Aleim Aleph Beis Gimel. Why does it say Aleph Beis Gimel on those baskets? Leida is the tradition to know which one was filled first, because the people would give the coins from Eretz Yisrael, it would come earlier. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, it would come a little later. And then further away, it would come even later. So Lahavi Yemena Risha and Shemitza Berisha. Because you should empty that basket, spend that money first, the money that came in first. The Gemara said, okay, so we see that Rabbi Yossi holds that you use the first one. And that would explain also why you use the first remaining goat that was left from that first remaining pair. So, yeah.
The reason we learned, I think, that the reason you go Aleph Beis Gimel is to make sure that you're using the truma from this year.
Yeah, that was also part of it. We had also we had 13 shayfers, called, and one of them was Taklin Antikin, last year's scholar. Aleph Beis Gimel was because actually the first one was filled first. That was ready to be used first. The other one, as we'll see now. You really don't have a proof that if you have a bunch of them that are ready, that you always use the first one, right? The first one that's ready, you don't know that. Over here, you only had one of them that was ready, possibly. The Aleph was filled, maybe Beis wasn't filled yet. So if you take from the Beis, wasn't ready yet. It wasn't filled to the top. I wanted them to get filled. Ella Rab Yesi the Pesach. We have a different source. We're looking for a source where you have 2 things that are eligible at the same time, and I use the first one. The Tanan or the Tanya it's supposed to be. Hamafrish Pischai Va'avad. If someone had a Korban Pesach, he's designated it. However, he lost it. So he designates another one in its place. And then he finds the first one. Now he has 2, right? He found his old one, and he has the new one. He gets to offer, he has a choice, whichever one he wants. Rabbi Yossi says no, he uses the first one, the one that was lost and found. Here we see that you go back to using the first one. That would make sense. That's Rav's source. However, he adds in, if the second one is much better, then you bring the second one. Okay, but our source is Rabbi Yossi that says that you attempt to use the one that was designated first, that was lost and then returned. So too, by the Karban, by the Sar, you use the one that was designated first, the first lottery. And even though there was a time that it was rejected, but it comes back. Amar Rava. Rava says, Dekamas nisan kavasei de Rav, the Brisa kavasei de Rabbi Yochanan. If you look carefully, the Mishnah supports Rav. And the Brisa supports Rabbi Yochanan. The Ktani was taught in the Mishnah. Im shel shein meis. If the Karban, the two goats, the Karban goat died. Zesha Allah olav ager l'shem iskayim tachta. When I do the new lottery, the one that comes up for the Karban, for the chatas, will replace the chatas that died. Okay, that we understood. V'idach kedekai kai. Notice it doesn't say about the other one. What's going on is the other one doesn't get replaced. The Sar Lazazel stays there. It's still used. Okay. Brisa kavasei de Rabbi Yochanan. The Brisa supports Rabbi Yochanan. The Ktani, Sheini, Eini Edeya, Msheni Shebazug Rishon, Msheni Shebazug Sheni. The Brisa says that the second one, I don't know which one. Is that the second one of the first pair, the second one of the second pair? Yoma Daf. So I figure it out because it says not the one, it should remain standing to be sent away. The other one should remain standing to be sent away to Azazel. And the Brisa learns from that it should remain standing, not the one that its friend was already died, which means the second one, the one from the second pair is going to be sent. My mashma, how does it know that? From Yomad Chai, should remain standing. It says Yomad Chai v'leishik paramad. Yomad is the future. You should make it stand, and not that it had already stood. That means the new one is going to be the one that's going to be sent away. Okay, Tanan was taught in the Mishnah. Okay, what's happening over here? When we learned the Mishnah, we said the Gemara is going to discuss it. But if you turn back to the Mishnah on Samach Beis, it says in my page I have a star right. V'hasheni yira achi yistav v'yimacher v'yiplu damav v'nedava she'in chatas tzivar mesa. The second animal is, in other words, there's one left over. We don't know which one it is, though. It's not like this Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. But the second animal that's remaining from the first pair, the second pair, right? So that you wait till it gets a mum. Because even though it's a chatas, but chatas, we don't say that it gets put to death by an individual that has an extra chatas. For whatever reason, it gets put to death because he already was atoned. So that other animal is just put to death. But here we say that it's just wait till it gets a mum. Shein chatas tzibur mesa. Because it's a community offering, it doesn't get put to death. It's a different halacha. Rabbi Yehuda says tamas, that it does get put to death. Then va'idam Rabbi Yehuda, also Rabbi Yehuda says nishbach adam yamas mishtalech, mesa mishtalech yishafech adam. That if the blood spilled, then you put to death the mishtaleach, the one that gets sent away. And if the one that gets sent away died, then you spill out the blood. Now, what's he saying? That's va'id. Rashi says, the Gemara mefarish mesel asufei. What is he adding? What's he adding? Let's see. Back in our Gemara. Tanan, va'idam Rabbi Yehuda nishbach adam yamas mishtaleach, mesa mishtaleach yishafich adam. That if the blood spilled from the sacrifice, then the mishtaleach needs to be replaced as well. And if the mishtaleach dies, if the goat that gets sent to Azazel dies, then you have to actually spill out the blood. The Gemara says, Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan, this is going to work according to Rabbi Yochanan the Baalei Chaim Nidachim that say that sacrifices that while they're alive they could be rejected. What happened over here? There was an animal that got shechted. The blood wasn't sprinkled yet, and it spills. So what's the problem? According to Rav, bring another animal. Bring another two animals. Make a gyro. Replace the carbon. And the mishtaleach, the first one, was going to be sent away. Why yamas mishtaleach? Why does it get put to death? Ella l'Rav. Why should it be put to death? That was perfectly fine. Right? Rav says you use the first one. You use the first group. Rav says, I wasn't discussing Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. I had an argument with Rabbi Yochanan, but that was not in Rabbi Yehuda. I was discussing the Rabbanan that don't say this. Rabbi Yehuda, I know, agrees to Rabbi Yochanan's view. That Baalei Chaim Nidachim, that it gets rejected. I wasn't discussing Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. I was discussing the Tanakama. That Tanakama didn't mention that you have to put it to death because the blood got spilled out. Bishleim el Rav. Now the Gemara says the other way. According to Rav, Rav just created a machlekes here between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. The machlekes is of Baalei Chaim Nidachim. Rav says the machlekes I have with Rabbi Yochanan is a machlekes Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda, and I follow the Rabbanan. So Bishleim el Rav, b'hapligi Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbanan. Now we know what the machlekes is. Now, if you notice in the Mishnah, it says v'oid. There's another thing they're arguing about. So they're arguing about two things. First, they're arguing about if chatas satzibur is mesa, if you put to death a community's chatas that's not eligible to be brought anymore, or do you let it get a mum? The Rabbanan say you let it get a mum, and the Rabbanan says you put it to death. They're also arguing about if Baalei Chaim Nidachim, if once it's rejected, if it could be used. However, El Rabbi Yochanan by Pligi. Rabbi Yochanan says even the Rabbanan agree that Baalei Chaim are Nidachim. And Rabbi Yehuda says Baalei Chaim Nidachim. So we lose one of the arguments. So what's the ba'id? And another argument here. We only have one argument, which is if Chatas Atzibur is Mesa or not. Amar Rava says, Hamrina, they can mastis and kavasei the Rav. We already said, I said before, that the Mishnah fits with Rav. The Brisa supports Rabbi Yochanan, but the Mishnah fits with Rav. Okay, Tanan. Shein Chata, that's not a good teretz. I mean, it's like saying, I know your question, we discussed it already, but it's like avoiding the answer, you know. just to accept that we asked that question before is not an answer. Okay. That's why I say, oh, that's an old question. Okay. Okay, so we learned in the Mishnah, Shein Chatas Tzibur Mesa. The Rabbanan held, the Tanakama held, that a community chatas is not put to death. You let it get a mum, which is a much more lenient way of treating an animal. It gets a mum, it gets a blemish, it becomes not eligible to be brought as a carbon. You sell it to redeem it, and then with the money you bring another carbon. What happens with the animal? It gets eaten. It's a mundane animal. Yeah. Now you're not supposed to use it for work or whatever. What about an individual? What about an individual sacrifice? In exactly the same scenario, then it's Mesa. It would be put to death. Now, Bishleim Rabbi Yochanan, we can understand Rabbi Yochanan, Kidir Rabbi Abba Amar Rav, Amar Rabba Abba Amar Rav. Don't get confused that he's quoting Rav, who he argues with. He's quoting this another view, a different view, that Hakal Maidim, everyone would agree. Shim Niskaper B'Shein Avuda Avuda Mesa. If there's two karbanos, what happened was he had a sacrifice that got lost, so he designates another one, and then he finds the first one. So everyone agrees that if you offered up the second sacrifice, really machlekes Rebbe and the Rabbanon about this, but if the new one was offered, that the first one is put to death. Elul Rav, but according to Rav, why is it a problem according to Rav? Rav says that the second animal grazes. According to the Rabbanon, the second animal grazes by a korban tziba. And you use the first one. Rav's saying that the first animal is not a rejected animal. The one that got lost is not really rejected. So it would go like this. According to Rav, that views that there was an option there of which animal to offer. So this is more similar to a case where someone says he designates two animals initially. He says, I need one chatas, but I don't know which one I'm going to use. I don't know, maybe one's going to get lost. Let me designate two just to be safe. Right? It's like when your wife sends you shopping and you don't know which one she wanted. You get the two, you get both of them just to be safe. You don't want to have to go back. So, Vamar Abaishia says, Hifrish Dei Chatayis Lachrayas, Miskaper Bachas Me'am Vasheni Tira. So, we wanted to make not an assumption. We wanted to make a diuk. What's a diuk? We wanted to, but to the emphasis on one thing, it implies, wanted to make this implication, that by a chatas tzibur, it's not put to death, but by an individual, it is put to death. That's what we wanted to say. Now, according to Rabbi Yochanan, we sort of had that, because if you offered up the second sacrifice, the first one is put to death. That was rejected. According to Rav, the first one is not rejected. So when you offer up the second one, the first one was still just there for lachrayas. It was there for just in case, right? It was still eligible. So I don't have this implication that if it would be a korban tzibur, it's not put to death. It would be a korban yachid, it would be put to death. It's not true. Even by a korban yachid, it wouldn't be put to death, according to Rav. It would be, you let it graze. So the Gemara says, Kivan Dama Rava, Rav Savala Krab Yesi, the mitzvah brishin, mi kara kemafrishli bedami. Since Rav already said that Rav goes like Rabbi Yossi, that you have to use the first one, or that you're supposed to use the first one. So automatically the second one is as if it's not there. That's the one that's not acceptable. So therefore, it's considered like it was designated just to be lost. So therefore, it gets put to death. As we were assuming that Rav had a full option, and therefore we had a question: you can use this one or use that one. But we're saying no. Rav really holds that you only use the first one. If that's the case, then the second one is rejected if it's a private sacrifice, an individual sacrifice was put to death. Tanan, taught in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yudaimer Thomas. The Tanakama says that what do we do with that remaining animal? You had 3 animals there. The Tanakama holds that the third animal just grazes. And Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it's put to death. According to Rabbi Yochanan, the Tanakama holds the second animal, the second pair is the one that's used. The first pair is entirely rejected. One of them died, and the other one can't be used. So the Tanakama holds that the one that can't be used grazes, and Rabbi Yehuda says it's put to death. But the atonement comes from the second animal of the second pair. the Rabbi Yehuda Yamas, the Rabbi Yehuda b'may mechaper. You have to follow this. There's a machlekes going on here. We wanted to make that the machlekes is what to do with the second. The Tanakama holds that the remaining animal grazes until it gets a mum, and then it's sold. And Rabbi Yehuda says the remaining animal is put to death. According to Rabbi Yochanan, what's the remaining animal? The remaining animal of the first pair. That's what the machlekes is about. Which one is being used? Second pair entirely. According to Rav, what's the remaining animal? The second pair. Right? Now, who did Rav say his opinion in? Rav said in the Tanakama. Why was he only talking in the Tanakama based on our Gemara before? Because Rabbi Yehuda holds that you can't use the first pair. You can only use the second pair. Now I have a problem. The problem is that the way Rav is learning the Tanakama, we want to put the machlekes with Rabbi Yehuda and the Tanakama to be the same animal. So let's set up the stage again for Rav. The Tanakama holds that I had a first pair, one of them dies, I can use the remaining animal from the first pair, and I replace the dead animal with the second pair, and then there's one remaining animal from the second pair, I let it graze according to the Tanakh. So which one was offered? The first pair, the remaining animal of the first. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the remaining animal from the first pair is not acceptable, because Rav said that that's machlekes. So what happens over here? The second, according to him, I should use the animal from the second pair, right? The problem is that that's the one they're arguing about, where the Tanakhama says it grazes and Rabbi Yehuda says it gets put to death. We're thinking that Rabbi Yehuda and Tanakhama are arguing about the same animal. But if that's the case, the Gemara says, according to Rav, that he says that the second pair has an animal that's grazing, the Rabbi Yehuda Yamas, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, that animal is put to death, the Rabbi Yehuda b'may mechaper. The first pair you can't use according to Rabbi Yehuda. The second pair, he says, is put to death. He argues with the Tanakhama that say you let it graze. So which animal is offered? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda Asheni Kai. We can extend this machlekes a little bit more. We were being very narrow-minded about what they're arguing about. They have to be arguing about the same animal. You can take it a little more broad. Tanakama was saying that the remaining animal of the second pair is grazes, and Rabbi Yehuda says the remaining animal from the first pair is the one that's put to death. They're just arguing about the remaining animal, not the same animal. Otherwise, it's not going to fit. You let it open it up a little bit wider, so it fits in. So they did another lottery, so it does get designated. And according to Rav, one of them is going to be used. According to Rabbi Yochanan, both of them are going to be used. According to Rav, that only one of them is used. Now we have a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and the Tanakhama, what I should do with the other one. Now the truth is Rabbi Yehuda was never referring to that one, because he would have said that I can't use the first one. Both of them are being offered. It's the first one that gets put to death. But anyway, that's the look at the Kamais of Hachi. Some of them put this as a question. The same concept, but they asked it as a question. Rabbi Yehuda also says that if the blood spills, then the animal that's being sent out is put to death. And if the animal that's being sent out is put to death, dies, then Yishav Chadam, then I have to spill out the blood and bring another sacrifice. According to Rav, Reisha pligi bechatas tzibur. The first machlokes was if a community sacrifice is put to death, or if it's grazes, if it's not, there's no use for it. The seifa pligi balichayim, and the seifa over here is arguing about balichayim nidachim or not, which was a machlokes Rav and Rabbi Yechanan, but Rav claimed that it's really a machlokes to Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda, and Rav was following the Rabbanan. Ella Rabbi Yechanan, my void. According to Rabbi Yechanan, there's no machlokes over here about balichayim nidachim. Rabbi Yechanan holds that everyone holds balichayim nidachim. The first animal is not eligible. So what does it say? And also, Rabbi Yehuda says there's only one machlokes, what to do with a community sacrifice. That's not eligible. One machlokes, Tanakama says that you let it graze. Rabbi Yehuda says you put it to death. Why do you have to say va'id? There's something else they're arguing about. There is nothing else they're arguing about. Gemara says kasha. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Kasha is a question that could be answered. Yeah. Sometimes the halacha is according to the kasha. But the teku or tiyufta, we have other rules for that. Tiyufta is a total rejection, and the teku is, we have rules that we follow with the teku, or, machmer or whatever. Wait till Mashiach. The Aramaic word teku means let it stand. Okay. Add it to the vocabulary. Okay. Also, Rabbi Yehuda says that if the blood spilled of the goat that was of the sacrifice wasn't sprinkled yet, so you have to restart, and you put the goat that was going to be sent to Azazel, you put that to death. You have to restart. By nishpach adam, the blood spilled. So we understand what's going on over here. I had a pear. I was supposed to do a mitzvah with this pear, and I didn't do anything yet. I didn't sprinkle the blood, and I didn't send away the goat. So I have to restart. Nothing was performed with this pear. Everything is messed up. The blood spilled, and I didn't send the goat out. Dakati lo yisaved mitzvah.
So when this Gemara is talking about Mishpach it's referring to before the Hazah.
Before the Hazah of the sun.
It doesn't have anything to do with afterwards coming and pouring it on.
No. That's what we said was not market. Yeah. But let's go to the other side now. It's a very interesting point the Gemara is making. The halachas of Yom Kippur that are done inside the sanctuary are ma'akiv. The order is ma'akiv. It says chukah. Anything that's done with the white clothing, or that was machlekes, right? White clothing or inside. The carbon that goes to Azazel is not done with white clothing. It's not inside. So I'm supposed to take it to a certain place, and I'm supposed to throw it off the cliff. If it dies before it gets there, so is that ma'akiv? Or it was good enough. It died. What was supposed to happen? It was supposed to die, and it died. So mesa mishtaleya, if the animal died, so why do you spill out the blood like you're starting over, like it was a big disaster? That's what was supposed to happen. It was going to die anyway, and probably the exact location of which cliff or whatever, that didn't matter. So the mitzvah was performed. Amri debei Rabbi Yana Yamakra Yomad Chai Lefnei Hashem Lachaper. No, it has to stand alive before Hashem to atone. Ad Masi Yezakek Lias Chai. How long does it need to live? Ad Shas Matan Dam Shel Chavere. Until the blood is sprinkled of the other one. So it died too early. Premature. So if it died afterwards, that would have been fine. Tanan Hassam. it was learned in a Mishnah. Yeah, they correct the word Tanan. It's not really a Mishnah. I'm not sure. One side says it's not supposed to be Tanan. The other side says it is Tanan. The notes over here are arguing. Okay. It's taught. The people sent their shekel. Remember this story from Shkalim? They gave their shkalim to their coins that they're supposed to give every year to a person, and he's going to the Beis Hamikdash to drop it off. And V'nikim V'Shavdo got stolen along the way. So who's responsible? Do the people have to give it again, or is it considered like they gave it to him? If the Beis Hamikdash received it already. So if the coins in the Beis Hamikdash were already taken out, in other words, they already were going to use it, those coins. The trum was called Trumas Alishka, where they took from that chamber where the coins were in. Then the Shpon Lekasbar, all this fellow has to do is say that the people gave the coins, and it got lost. It wasn't through negligence. Yeah, that it would have gone into. So.
If we learn that it's actually out of the base, then we go there and get the coins.
I don't know if that's what the case is. Even if it's not a shliach of the best, maybe it was just a shliach of the people. The fact that they all gave it to one person becomes as if it was taken by the Beis Hamikdash. Becomes as if he becomes like an agent of the Beis Hamikdash to receive it, and he just swears that it was given, and they don't have to pay again.
But that's exactly my question. If I owe you money,
we give it to someone to bring to me.
We give it to a shliach.
Yeah.
Basically,
if it was my shliach, yeah. Right. So here we're saying, right. Here we're saying, even though it's a shliach of the people, once they designate it and hand it over, it's as if the Beis Hamikdash had received it.
Huh?
Yeah, it's as if they've received it. The imla. No. A shliach on a get has to be very specific who's sending the shliach. A shliach from the husband is delivering it. A shliach from the wife is receiving it. And the divorce takes place at different times. Right? If the wife sends a shliach to receive the get, she's divorced once it goes into the shliach's hand. If the husband sends a shliach, she's divorced when she gets it, which is a little bit later. So yeah. Nowadays we usually don't do a shliach. Kabbalah. Here's a shliach by we send the get with someone else, but we usually don't have the wife send someone to receive it. There's exceptions to that, but it's not common. So, in love, but let's say that it was at an earlier stage of the month, that it wasn't already Rosh Chodesh Nisan, where the coins were already taken out, and that they were being sent, but it wasn't considered like it was already received by the Beis Hamikdash, so therefore they have to pay again. You hear this? They find the coins. They have to pay again. They find the coins. They find the thieves. He does tshuva. Elo ve'elo shkalim him. They're both shkalim. But they cannot be used for the next year. Say, I have credit. I paid my taxes for 2 years and 1 year ahead. We don't say that. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. So it depends. If they lost after the Beis Hamikdash already started to spend the new money, then it's considered like the Beis Hamikdash lost it, even though it never made it to the Beis Hamikdash. But if it was lost before the Beis Hamikdash started to spend, so then it's as if it never made it to the Beis Hamikdash. Now it comes now, so they have to give again, and then when they find the new coins, yes, you're right. Yeah, the house always wins. So Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Aylan Lam L'Shana Haba. Rabbi Yehuda says no. it could be used for the following year. My time of the Rabbi Yehuda. What's the explanation of Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda says that obligatory offerings from this year could be brought next year. Isvei Abaya has a question. If, let's say, a goat or the bull of Yom Kippur gets lost, so they designate other ones. Same with the goat of Avodah Zarah, Chatas. They designate another one because it got lost. Kulam Yamusa, they're all put to death. Div Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says. Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Shimon Aimrim, Yirach Yistov, V'Yimkrov Yifl Dveim L'Davar Shein Chatas Tibur Mesa. Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Shimon, they hold Ein Chatas Tibur Mesa similar to the Tanakama of our Mishnah that argues with Rabbi Yehuda. It's Machlekes. Tanakama or Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda, what to do with this animal. Now, everyone agrees that these animals are put to death, or they're not eligible. So machlekes is put to death there if they get a mum. The problem is, why? Rabbi Yehuda just told us before that chayvas of Shana Zu could be brought next year. Why putting it to death? Use it next year. Yom Kippur's coming next year. It's already on the calendar, right? I know it's coming. Oh, is there an age problem? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. The Gemara doesn't mention that, and I don't know the details. But a par is an older animal, and if it's in its third year or fourth year, probably doesn't make a difference.
2+.
Yeah, it's 2+, right? Sir, I don't know the age of. Okay. Apparently, it's not bringing this up. Apparently, it's acceptable. Amalei, who is asking this? Abaya is asking. I don't know who he's asking to. I don't know who's responding. Amrulei, maybe they said to him. Now, Esrei is always, he's asking an individual. Or else it would have been Masiv. Masiv is when an individual asks to a bunch of people. Mesvei is when we don't know who's asking. It's just the general. Esvei is an individual to individual. Amalei responded, whoever it was, Kabbanas Tzibur Kamret, Shani Kabbanas Tzibur Kedirav Tuvi Amarav Yeshi. You're asking about Kabbanas Tzibur? That's different. That would go according to what Rav Tuvi Amarav Yeshi says. Rav Tuvi Amarav Yeshi, Amar Kra, Zayis Eilas Chedis B'Chodshrei, Amar Terech Chades V'Havili Karban Mitzuma Chadasha. When it comes to Kabbanas Tzibur, they need to be brought from the new Shkalim. You were talking about individual people that have a carbon from last year, they want to bring it again this year. So that's acceptable. Last year, I designated something for a carbon. I don't know what it would be. Oilasri or something. Okay, I didn't bring it. I'll bring it again. I'll bring it this year. But a carbon tzibur has to be brought from the new funds that people donated. Okay. The Gemara says, Hatei nachsar. That's a good answer for the goat, because the goat is a carbon tzibur. Par ma'yikal meimar. The par was the Kayin Gadol's own par. It's a carbon yachid. You didn't answer the question on the par. The par I should be allowed to use last year's par. It got lost, so I designated another. So use it the following year. It's a private carbon. The Gemara says gzeira parat the sar. We make a decree. We're going to allow you to do that for the par. You may do that for the sar as well. Mishum gzeira yamusu. So because of a gzeira, you put it to death. Maybe for the gzeira, just let it get a mum. That's a very strong thing to do for. It says v'ayid. Another issue is this itself, when the Gemara says mitzvah, means this is also just to be better, but it's not really a serious issue. It's mitzvah. It's to be an extra command. You're supposed to take from the new coins, but if you didn't take from the new coins and I used last year's coins, it's also good. So last year's coins would have been fine. The sire has that issue, but fine. The par doesn't even have the issue. So I'm making a gzeira, the par because of the sire, which itself had no problem. Let's leave it at Elam or Abzeir. Let's stop right there. Okay. Yeah, because it's going to go on. There's going to be a new question.